You know, when I came here 3 years ago almost, General Mattis told me, "Sir, we're very low on ammunition." I said, "That's a horrible thing to say." I'm not blaming him, I'm not blaming anybody, but that's what he told me. Because we were at a position where with a certain country, I won't say which one, we may have had conflict. And he said to me, "Sir, if you could, delay it, because we're very low on ammunition." And I said, "You know what, General, I never want to hear that again from another general. No president should ever, ever hear that statement. We're low on ammunition." And we now have more ammunition, more missiles, more rockets, more tanks, we have more of everything that we've ever had before, more jet fighters. But we were very low. I could even say it stronger. I don't want to say no ammunition, but that gets a lot closer. I said, I never want to hear that again, and I never want another president of the United States to hear that again. Could you imagine as president when they say we're very low on ammunition? And that is what I inherited from the past administration, and in all fairness to President Obama, to administrations before President Obama. That's what I got stuck with, and we fixed it, and we fixed it good.
Mr. President, do you still think it's the responsibility of the Saudis to defend themselves?
No, I think it is certainly the responsibility of them to do a big deal of their defense, certainly. I also think it's the responsibility of the Saudis to, if somebody like us, which are the ones, are going to help them, I know that monetarily will be very much involved in paying for that, but we would certainly help them. They've been a great ally. They spend $400 billion in our country over the last number of years. $400 billion. That's 1.5 million jobs.
To be clear, the President of the United States is trying to convince us that prior to him taking office, the United States military was low on ammunition. The United States military, low on bullets. All I can say is thank God Donald Trump came along, because our soldiers have apparently been walking around with empty guns for the last 2 decades. Good thing we haven't been in any wars, what with the fact that all this time we've been completely defenseless. And frankly, this is a bizarre strategy that Trump has repeated ad nauseum, kind of retroactively fear-mongering about how anemic our military had become before he took office, only to be rejuvenated by Trump. But we've always spent more money on defense than at least the next 7 countries combined, the large majority of which are allies, a trend that has held steady for decades. And I can't speak for everyone, but I highly doubt that Americans in 2019 are worried about being invaded by another country. If anything, Americans are likely more worried about a far-right extremist with a gun, but we're not likely to see this administration do anything to solve that problem anytime soon. So what this is, then, is Trump fear-mongering about something that allegedly was happening in the past and isn't anymore, so you can go ahead and thank him for solving the thing that you didn't know was a problem until you were told that it was, but now isn't. Got it. And all of this is in defense of Trump's new position to now go to war on behalf of Saudi Arabia. He had taken to Twitter this weekend writing, "Saudi Arabia's oil supply was attacked. There is reason to believe that we know the culprit, are locked and loaded depending on verification, but are waiting to hear from the kingdom as to who they believe was the cause of this attack, and under what terms we would proceed." And I know what you're thinking. No way you're gonna believe that the guy who sent armed troops to the southern border over Christmas for an imaginary invasion just so he could validate his baseless border wall argument is the same guy who just offered to go to war to protect Saudi oil. No way that the guy who used the US military to siphon money into his failing Turnberry resort is the same guy who's willing to trade American lives for Saudi oil. No way that the guy who invited the Taliban to the US on the anniversary of 9/11 is about to allow more Americans to die for Saudi Arabia, where the majority of the 9/11 hijackers came from. No possible way that the same guy who predicated his presidential campaign on his hatred for the Iraq War, which was a front for Dick Cheney to get his hands on Middle Eastern oil, is about to go to war for, wait for it, Middle Eastern oil. Just no way that the guy who tweeted, "Saudi Arabia should fight their own wars, which they won't, or pay us an absolute fortune to protect them and their great wealth," during Obama's term just turned around and opted to fight Saudi Arabia's war for them. There is no possible way I'll believe that. Okay, yeah, no, that all makes perfect sense. Trump tried to justify this all by claiming that Saudi Arabia has spent $400 billion in our country and added 1.5 million jobs. And he's repeated this point on countless occasions, but despite what he might think about saying something over and over, that doesn't make it true. PolitiFact researched this claim and found that instead of the 1.5 million jobs that Trump promised, the annual job estimate was actually 60,000 to 120,000 jobs a year. As for spending $400 billion, that figure closely resembles the total US exports to Saudi Arabia over the course of 2 decades. But that's not some pending or even recent order amount from Saudi Arabia. It's just the arbitrary sum of 20 years of total exports. PolitiFact warned that Trump treats spending that could play out over a decade as if it were spent in 1 year, and rated his claim pants on fire. And look, we can go in circles and parse Trump's inane rationale as if anything he said was based in reality, but the fact is that Trump likes Saudi Arabia because he has a history of benefiting financially from them. Period. In 1991, when Trump was mired in casino debt, he sold his yacht to a Saudi Arabian prince for $20 million. A few years later, the same Saudi prince bought a stake in Trump's Plaza Hotel. In 2001, Trump sold the 45th floor of his Trump World Tower to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for $4.5 million. And now, as president, Trump has continued to profit as Saudi lobbyists spent $270,000 at Trump's hotel in Washington, D.C. At Trump's New York hotel, after 2 years of declines, Saudi bookings were responsible for boosting revenue 13%. Trump even bragged about his conflict of interest at a campaign rally.
Saudi Arabia, and I get along great with all of them. They buy apartments from me, they spend 40 million, 50 million. Am I supposed to dislike them? I like them very much.
This is, per usual, what happens when you have a financially compromised president acting on behalf of himself instead of the interests of the nation. This is why we need to see Trump's tax returns. Although with him bragging about just how indebted he is to the Saudis, we might as well take him at his word about that. This is nothing more than a quid pro quo from a compromised businessman looking to take care of people who have historically taken care of him. If the President of the United States offering to get us mired in yet another war in the Middle East, all because he's grateful that the Saudis bought some rooms in his hotel doesn't scare you, it should. I'd call this a lot of things, but America first isn't one of them.